Okay, welcome to Chapter 1, Key Issue 4. We've almost made it through the very first chapter. Why are some human actions not sustainable? Sustainability and resources. So a resource is a substance in the environment that is useful to people, economically and technologically feasible to access, and socially acceptable to use. Interesting that they put in there socially acceptable, because we're looking at this oil pumper here. And there is some commentary on if people are feeling like the continued use of petroleum is acceptable or not, but that's definitely a resource. A renewable resource is produced by nature more rapidly than it is consumed by humans, meaning we can use it and we're going to get it back because nature is going to recreate it. A non-renewable resource is produced in nature more slowly than it is consumed by humans. And these are the things that we really want to make sure that we are protecting and not using up. Sustainability is using resources in a way that ensure availability in the future. So certainly one of the concerns of living on this planet is that we want to have an aspect of sustainability. We don't want to use everything up and have nothing left, because let's face it, any planet we look out and see doesn't look as good as Earth at this point. The 3 pillars of sustainability. Well, the United Nations, this is the governing body that's really had its hand on making sure that there's laws in place to make sure the planet is cared for, suggests that sustainability rests on 3 pillars as discussed in the Our Common Future, which is the report created by Brundtland, and it's also known as the Brundtland Report back in 1987. And the 3 pillars are environment, economy, and society. In the environment aspect, we look at conservation. Can we have sustainable use of things that we might lose should we overuse them? And can we have preservation, maintain things in their present condition? As far as the economy aspect, we're looking at supply and demand and how that determines affordability. If we have sustainability issues, but there's products that are really cheap to get, it's going to be difficult for us to keep things sustainable. It's going to be difficult for us to rationalize not using a resource because it's too expensive perhaps to go the opposite direction and do sustainable practices. We have to consider the economy. So as sustainability becomes cheaper, more people will move that direction. Meaning, if wind energy is more expensive than petroleum or fuel-based energies, it's going to be hard to get people to go towards wind energy just because it's more expensive. So sustainability depends on the economy. And society is the 3rd pillar of sustainability. When consumer choices can support sustainability, people embrace it as a value. Meaning, if consumers are concerned about sustainability, they can support it as a society. If they can afford it as a society, they'll embrace it as a value. These 3 things we must consider in order for our planet to be sustainable. But you've also got critics of sustainability, people who don't necessarily agree with the policies or the idea of sustainability. Some people say it's too late. The World Wildlife Fund claims that the world passed a sustainable level around 1980. They said, you know what, there's too many people on the planet. There's 7 to 9 billion already. There's only going to be more. We're using up resources more than resources are being created naturally. It's already too late. Some critics also say that the Earth's resources have no limits, so we shouldn't be concerned about sustainability. They say we have more than enough resources. The environmental improvements that we can do as a people can be achieved with careful assessment. So if we just manage our resources better, they really wouldn't have a limit. And still others claim that sustainability really is just propaganda. They say that sustainability is there is no sustainability issue. It doesn't exist. Like the planet is able to take care of itself. And there is concern about the laws and regulations that are created to reduce national and personal sovereignty. Meaning, if you have a governing body that is over the entire planet and they put laws in place, they are going to have control over, like the United States, because this global community would have laws that supersede, that go above the United States. And their fear is that we would lose our sovereignty. We would lose our ability to govern ourselves. And so these are the critics of sustainability. The Earth's physical systems. We take a look at the physical systems and landscapes in place. Well, we've got abiotic systems, which are composed of non-living organic matter. It's not alive. And within this abiotic system, we've got the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. In the atmosphere, of course, we've got the thin layer of gases surrounding the Earth. In the hydrosphere, we consider all the water on and near the surface of the Earth. In the lithosphere, it encompasses the Earth's crust and the upper mantle. So that's the abiotic system. In the biotic system, we've got living organisms. The biosphere is within the biotic system. This is where all living organisms on Earth, including plants and animals, exist. And that encompasses a number of the abiotic systems when you put them together. The atmosphere, it's got thin layers of gases surrounding the Earth and goes all the way up to 300 miles. And what we've been told is that it's held in by Earth's gravity. So as Earth spins around, so does the atmosphere, pretty much at the same speed as the rotating globe. It consists of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 0.9% argon, 0.036 carbon dioxide, and 0.64 other gases. When we have variations in pressure, that causes weather. Climate is the long-term weather condition at a particular location. So it's not just weather, like what's your weather today, it's climate, where we recognize long-term weather conditions. So when we think of a climate of an area, we think, well, what's the climate of Texas? Well, it's mostly kind of hot, and we do get some seasons in here, but what's the climate of the Amazon jungle? Okay, it's really hot and rainy. These are just weather patterns over a long period of time. But we do have specifically climate regions as designed by Köppen. The A climate region is tropical. The B climate region is dry. The C climate region is warm to mid-latitude. The D is cold to mid-latitude. We're over here. And E is polar. And this is the official breakdown for our climate regions. When you look across this map, this graphic here, you can sense, based on the equator, how things line up in relation to those climate regions. The hydrosphere, water. We've got oceans, lakes, rivers, groundwater, glacial ice, and vapor in the atmosphere. Over 97% of the world's water is in the oceans. So basically, think about that. It's all salt water. Just 3%. 3% there is left over for fresh water in lakes, rivers, and groundwater, and glacial ice. Oceans provide water vapor in the form of evaporation, which returns to Earth as fresh water precipitation, as rain. So water is essential for life. We know this. The climate of a location influences human activities, especially growing food. And that's based off what we find in the hydrosphere because of the water. Here we see people in India covering up from the annual monsoons that bring water to their tropical climate region. It's not like what we have here in the United States. These people have to wait for their once-a-year rain. The lithosphere. This is the crust and a portion of the mantle which extends down 45 miles. The interesting thing is, we haven't been able to dig down 45 miles. We've been able to dig down, I believe it's 15 kilometers, which the Russians did. And they tried in the 80s for a number of years to extend beyond 15 kilometers, and they could not do it. No matter what happened, no matter what drill bit and dynamite and anything, they couldn't get past 15 kilometers. It seems to be the magic number going deep. So I have to ask, okay, I'm sure you have specific scientific experiments and data, but how do you know what's below 15 kilometers? How do you know what's down 45 miles? You know? In any case, the lithosphere, this is Earth's features and landforms, and it's called geomorphology, and it helps explain why people live where they do. Because if you have a feature like a mountain, people don't tend to live high up. If you've got flat plains, people tend to live there, especially when we think about historic civilization growing, because that's where food was able to be grown, on the flat plains. In the lithosphere, we can examine topographical maps. So for example, you see northwestern Mississippi here, and you see the high points and the low points. The biosphere, all of Earth's living organisms. This is where they live. It includes portions of all other 3 abiotic systems as well. An ecosystem, this is a group of living organisms, and the abiotic spheres within the interact. Within this area, all of them come together. We've got living organisms, abiotic backdrops, plants, animals, that's the ecosystem. Ecology is the study, scientifically, of these ecosystems. So human geographers are interested in ecosystems because they're involved with the interactions of humans and the biosphere. In human geography, we look at why people live, where they do, and how they interact with each other. The study of the physical landscape throughout the biosphere helps us do that. We look at, is there enough water for life? If there is, people may live there. Are there pollutants? Is that going to push people away? Is that going to cause issues to the plant and animal life? Will we have enough oxygen in an area? Is there too much CO2 being put off? Can we find fuel for energy? How is that going to affect our ability to live in a clean environment? How can we find more land to grow more food? As we continue to grow in population on this earth, are we going to have enough land? If we chop down the rainforests, are we going to have enough oxygen? Within the biosphere, we look at erosion as well. This is where the soil washes or blows away. And as we cut down trees, we know that we do have issues with erosion. And also we think about the depletion of nutrients, the overuse. As we cut down trees to farm and our population grows and we have so many people that need to be fed, we tend to multi-crop, where we're planting more and more crops per season, and we're not giving those fields time to replenish their nutrients. That is an issue within the biosphere. Cultural ecology. This is the geographic study of human-environment relationships, where we combine culture and the environment. One of the terms within cultural ecology is environmental determinism, which is the physical environment causes social development. What aspects of our physical landscape cause people to develop there? This understanding and research was pioneered by German geographers Alexander von Humboldt and Karl Ritter. After them, we've got Friedrich Ratzel and Ellen Churchill Semple, who claim geography studies influence of natural environment on people. It's the same kind of thing. They extend on it, like, okay, the natural environment, people are going to live on this lake because they're able to fish there. They're able to travel across that lake faster than they would over a mountain. And it's finished up by Ellsworth Huntington, who argued that climate was a major determinant of civilization. I mean, that seems like common sense nowadays, right? But if you think that people in a cold climate, they're not able to grow crops, so it's not really going to thrive there. If you're in the lush basket lands of the middle United States, and we're able to irrigate and utilize a little bit deeper underneath the topsoil there on the plains, we're going to have one of the best agricultures on the planet in the United States of America. This is environmental determinism. The physical landscape causes social development. We also look at possibilism. The physical environment may limit some human actions, but people have the ability to adjust to their environment. This is the opposite of environmental determinism. It's actually a rejection of environmental determinism, because possibilism says people learn to adjust and grow different crops depending on the climate. So possibilism says what's possible in an area? Well, more than environmental determinism, because people were smart and were able to adjust, and we can grow using technologies that were not limited by the environment. For example, when we talk about cultural ecology, we look at the culture of how people use their lands. So why in the United States do we plant a front yard with grass and then trim it down? Why not just let it grow? How do our cultural values impact the environment? Well, here, our environment, we trim it down, it looks very nice and green, but a lot of the times we put pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers on this land, and it impacts the environment. But it looks good, right? Well, what about here? What if it's totally natural and it still looks kind of lush, but it's just different from what our culture expects? These are interesting things when we discuss human geography, specifically cultural ecology. When we modify our environment, we change it. We look at the Netherlands, and in our textbook, it states that this is a form of sustainable ecosystem, where they've got a polder. Here's the Netherlands over here. Polder is land created by draining water. So the Netherlands is infamous for creating land from what used to be water. So, for example, this Hydrosphere works here, this is just used to be all underwater. So they just drained the water and created more land, and they used it for farming. The other aspect that they do in the Netherlands is they have dikes. These are big walls that hold back water. The concern in the Netherlands is that the rising seawater from global warming potentially would flood over the dikes and flood their farmlands as well. And in the text, it also does mention that there were pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers used in a lot of these areas, and they were concerned about that pollution, so they've started to let it go back to just fallow lands as well. In contrast to that, our text says that there is an unsustainable ecosystem in South Florida. And we look over here, we see the Everglades, the very famous Everglades where you see alligators and marshlands down here in South Florida. Well, they said that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built levees blocking water flow from Lake Okeechobee to the Everglades to create land to grow crops. So here's Lake Okeechobee. And what they've done is they've created levees and they've blocked the water flow. So they've cut off the Everglades, and it's been good because they've created farmlands and been able to build houses and such in this area. But at the same time, you're getting a lot of pollution from the growth of industry and residential housing. And what the text states is cattle that were along these new levees that were built. A lot of pollution, and it started to kill fish and vegetation down here in our natural preserve here in the Everglades Natural Park. So what we have seen, as stated in the textbook, is that we've lost half of the Everglades due to development, due to houses and infrastructure and roads and hospitals and industry. So on the one hand, we were able to build more places for people to live, and that's important in South Florida because it's very expensive in that area and people want to move there. It's got a climate that populations want to live in. But at the same time, at what cost? We've lost the Everglades. We've lost half of the Everglades, that the text states, and that's a problem because we want to maintain our ecosystem. So this is a look at chapter 1.